Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a preview of this game right here. This is Skara Brae. It is published by Garfield Games, who is sponsoring today's video, so a huge thank you to them, and it's designed by Shem Phillips. And this is going to be one of two games that Garfield Games are bringing to crowdfunding. I will have the link to the campaign down below, but it is going to be both Skara Brae as well as the Anarchy, which is a roll and write, or I guess it's a little bit of like a flip and write, worker and write. And that game is designed by Bobby Hill, the same designer that designed Hadrian's Wall, and you guys know how I feel about Hadrian's Wall, so keep an eye out for that video as well. I will have a preview of the Anarchy going up either before this one, after this one, at the same time as this one. Not 100% sure the timing, but they will both be available on the same crowdfunding campaign. But this is a game for 1 to 4 players, so there is a solo mode. It takes about 60 minutes, so an hour, and it is for ages 13 plus. So we're going to get right into this. If you guys want to see more about Skara Brae, then just keep on watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Comment down below if you are interested in either Skara Brae or the Anarchy. I'd love to know. I'd love to chat about that down below. Without further ado, let's get into this preview of Skara Brae, shall we? So getting into a little bit of an aim of the game as well as the components, I do want to tell you guys a little bit about the story behind Skara Brae because I think it's very cool. But basically over 5,000 years ago, there was a group of hunters and farmers that built this thriving community, and basically all of the waste that they created, so all of the broken shells and tools and different things, different waste, they actually threw into a huge mound, and hundreds of years later, a new generation actually came and found these huge mounds, and basically they dug into them and actually created housing. So this game is kind of representing that. There's going to be a ton of different resources. I have not seen this many resources in a game. This game is pure resource management, so if you really enjoy resource management, then I definitely recommend checking this one out. But yes, there is a ton of different resources, and you are going to be managing these resources in your area here, doing different actions. Basically, you are going to be collecting these different resources in order to furnish and clothe and shelter your group or your community in order to get the most victory points at the end of the game. The game is played over 4 rounds, and then at the end of those 4 rounds, whoever gets the most victory points from various things will be the winner of the game. So that is a little bit of the aim of the game, but as for the components, I've already mentioned, but the resources in this game, there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different resources. There are things such as food, bone, mitten, which is a really big part of the game. That's kind of like a negative thing that you're going to be gaining. There's also like wood, stone, seaweed, shells, deers, cows, bunnies, sheep, wheat, wool, fish, as well as these things here called skill knives, which these are going to be used a little bit differently than the rest of the resources, but that's another one of the 16 resources that you are going to be managing over the game. So like I said, this is a big resource management game where you're going to be gaining resources, placing them into your kind of storage here, which the storage is going to be able to get larger and larger, but you do not want that to happen. You actually want to, make your resource area larger and larger, but then by the end of the game, have it come back down, because the bigger you make your resource storage area, the more victory points you're going to lose at the end of the game. So it's really about managing those resources, but also there's going to be various kind of worker placement actions and things that you're going to be able to use those resources for. So those are all the resources there. We also have a few different decks of cards here that are going to be used for the solo mode. Then there's also going to be these cards here, which each round you're going to be drafting 3 cards. So you're going to get 3 turns per round, and at the beginning of your turn you're going to be drafting one of the available cards. You're going to be doing something with that card, and then you're going to be placing your workers, which at the first round or during the first round you're going to have 1 worker, second round 2 workers, third round 3 workers, and fourth round is all 4 workers. So you're going to be doing that, which I will go over all of the different types of cards that you're going to have. There are 4 different types of cards, but we'll go over that. So those are the cards. We also have this kind of area here, which this is what each player is going to have. So I only have this set up for 1 player, but each player would have their own kind of setup here with their main board, as well as these. I will actually move this over to this side so you guys can see all of the tiles here, but each player is going to get their own set of tiles and they're going to arrange them in the same way, and it actually creates one big picture here. Aside from this one, all players actually have the exact same actions, and then each player is actually going to get their own unique ability as well. So here I have the Explore ability, but there are a bunch of different ones that at the beginning of the game, each player is going to gain 2, and then they're going to decide which one they want to use for that game, and that gives them one kind of unique ability that they have that the other players do not. And then, like I said, you will be using the workers that you're going to be gaining to be triggering those different actions on those tiles. And at the end of every turn, you are going to take back your workers and then use them again every single turn. Everyone has those 4 workers. I will say you do have 1 large worker as well, which this is going to be the worker that you gain on the first round. And the large worker is going to be able to be placed on the same tile as another worker. So the small workers, you cannot have 2 small workers on the same tile. But if you do want to take the same action twice, you could place a small worker on there, and then you could also place your large worker on there as well to take the action twice. So yes, each player is going to have their 4 workers, and then you also have your main board here, which is going to have, like I said, your storage area. It also has a really good overview of the player's turns, placing your settlers, which I'll get into, the end of round and end of game. And then you do have 2 tracks here. The first one here is the furnish track. So this is going to be the track that you're going to be going up that is going to get you more and more victory points the higher you go on that track for your settlers that you have gathered at the bottom, which I will get into, but you have that. You also have your trade track here, which you are going to be trading in various amounts of different resources in order to go up that track as well. And the higher you get on that track, you're going to be getting better and better kind of rewards. Then you're also going to be getting more and more victory points there as well. So that is the trade track. And then lastly, at the bottom here, you do have the, I would call it like a cooking legend. So it does give you the amount of cooking actions that it takes to cook the various types of animal resources, and then what you get out of them when you do that exchange. So for example, we have the rabbit here that is going to take 2 cook actions, and then you're going to give in that rabbit because you've cooked that rabbit, and then you would gain 1 food and 1 hide in exchange for that. So everything kind of has a different amount. So for a cow, you get 2 food, 1 hide, and 2 bones, so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of different kind of things there in the cook legend. And then next up here, we have the turn order kind of board, which I will get into that. We also have some additional roof cards that you can gain throughout the game. If you ever have more than 4 or at least 4 of a certain resource and you're running out of certain resources, then you can use these, place it on to your board. That will take up those 4 spots, and then you would only need, you know, 1 of a specific resource placed on top to represent that you had 4 of that specific resource. So that is just if you run out of different resources, but that I believe is everything. Everything over here is just the additional things for the other players. So each player is going to get a board. Each player is going to pick a random one of the unique tiles here, and then you also get your own workers, your own little disc here for the turn order, as well as your own set of the tiles. But anyways, that is everything for this part of the video. So we are going to get right into exactly how Skara Brae is played, so you can get a better feel if it's something that you would enjoy. So let's get into that. All right, so getting right into exactly how Skara Brae is played. Like I mentioned, this game is played over 4 rounds, and each round consists of 3 turns. So there's going to be 3 times around the table, and then that will be the end of the round. You'll have to do a few things at the end of the round, which we'll get into, but at the beginning of the game, you're going to start with 2 of these skill knives. Each player is going to start with their large worker. You're going to have your little piece here on your furnish track in your trade track, and then your little slider here is going to start on the second column. So each player is only going to, at the beginning of the game, have room for 3 things. And the main thing when it comes to your storage area is if you ever have more, or if you've ever gained more resources than you have space for, you always have to slide your slider over to the right. So in this situation, I only have 1 space because I've started with 2 skill knives in 2 of my 3 spots. So if I actually got 2 more resources, I would only have space for 1. So I would have to push over my slider once to the right, and then I would have space for those 2 resources. And whenever you gain resources, this is a very important thing, you have to take them. You can never gain resources and say no to them. You also can't just discard resources at your leisure. You have to move over and you have to figure out a way to spend those resources. And then also you do have to then move your slider back by the end of the game. So the more and more resources you get, the more your slider is going to move over, and then the more you're going to have to try to move them back to both avoid negative victory points at the end of the game, as well as gaining mitten at the end of each round. And mitten is not good because it is a resource that you actually cannot use. So it just takes up spots in your resource storage area. So yes, that is everything for that general concept. The first thing that we're going to get into, so at the beginning of each round, each player is going to have to decide at the beginning of their turn whether they want to take their turn. So this is the little turn order track here. I will have some B-roll of it so you guys can see it better. But basically it is a triangle. So all of our discs are going to start on one side, and basically you have 2 choices. You can either move it directly to the right, and that is going to be that you are taking your turn. You would then draft one of the 4 cards that you had available for that turn. You would then use that card in a way, which we'll get into, and then you would place out your workers, do whatever conversions and actions that you needed to do, and then that would be the end of your turn. So that's the first thing. Or what you could actually do is you could move your little disc here to the top, and that signifies that you're going to pass. So you are saying, I'm not wanting to take my turn right now. I will take it at the end of this round once every other player has finished their turn. And then at the beginning of the next round, I'm going to have priority. So in this situation, purple would move to the top. Yellow would then decide, hey, I also want to pass, which would make no sense because they would be going next anyways. So they would probably say, okay, I'm going to go next. I'm going to move over to the right, take my turn. Then purple would go because they decided to pass. They would go to the top of the stack, and then all of the discs would move over again back to the left side, and then purple would be at the top, which would be that they are the first at the beginning of that next turn. So at the beginning of your turn, you're always going to have that decision of whether you want to take your turn now or if you want to pass. Go later on that turn, but then be able to go sooner on your next turn, because as you guys can see here, each round you're always going to be able to see all of the cards that are going to be available for that round. So the 3 different turns, you're going to be able to see what on your next turn you might be able to get. So if you see a card that you really want to get on your next turn, you might decide to pass. So you have better priority on the next round, and you will have more likely chance to get the card that you want. So speaking of cards, this is what you're going to be doing at the beginning of your turn. So like I said, you're going to have a row of 4 different cards for a 2 to 3 player game, or you're going to have 5 cards for a 4-player game to draft from. So there are 4 different types of cards. So the first card type that you're going to see are settlers. So there are 4 different colors of settlers. There are the green settlers, there's blue, yellow, as well as brown. And these 4 different types of settlers are going to coordinate with the 4 different gather action tiles that you have here. So you have the blue, the green, the brown, and the yellow. So if I decided to draft this green settler, I would actually place that below the green gather tile. And what this actually is going to do is it's going to allow me to gain those resources. So for every one of those settlers that I now have, I will be able to draft that resource. So for this one, the gather action here is going to be that I can gain either a stone or a wool. And I only have 1 currently, but if I, on a later turn, actually drafted another green, that would be my second one. And for every settler card that I have there, which have these little like stone icons in the top left-hand corner, that's how many resources that I can draft. So in this situation, I now have 2. So I will be able to either get, 2 stone or 2 wool, or I can get a mixture of both. So I could get 1 stone and 1 wool. So that is the settlers. Additionally, once you have gathered those specific resources, you are then going to be able to do the action at the bottom of the settler. So for this one here, it is that for every wheat icon, which currently right now I do not have any, so this probably wouldn't be a great thing to do currently. So for every wheat icon that I had, I would gain 1 wheat resource from the supply, which like I said, I don't have any, so I wouldn't be able to gain any, but that would be a great one if I did have some settlers already that allowed me to do that. But different settlers are going to allow you to do different things with that bottom action. So some of them are going to be gather a specific amount of resources for that specific gather icon. It could be just gather 1 of a specific resource. It could be an exchange. So for example here, this one is that I could spend 1 stone to get 2 shells. Or this one here is spend 3 wheat to gain 1 cow, different things like that. But I will mention actually that when you are doing that action, the gather action, you can spend these skill knives, and you do start with 2 of these at the beginning of the game, but I do believe that there are different ways that you can gain these. And basically what these are going to allow you to do is they are going to allow you to have 1 additional environment icon. So the icon that is in the top left-hand corner of these settler cards, if you spend this, it's like you have an additional environment icon, and that then allows you to gain more of that resource. So in the situation when I drafted this card here and I placed it here, that would only have 1 of the environment icon, but I could spend 1 of these to gain an additional environment icon. So it would be like I had 2. So then I would be able to gain 2 of these resources. Additionally, I could also use 1 of these for its bottom action here, which like I said, this was the one where for the yellow icon or yellow environment icon, I'd be able to gain wheat, which I didn't have any of those environment icons. So I could use this skill knife in order to represent 1 of those and actually gain a wheat in that situation. So that is that. We have 3 other types of cards here. The first one is going to be these roof cards, which any of these 3 types of cards that you gain, you are going to put them below your main board. So the roof cards are actually just going to give your settlers a roof over their heads. So at the end of each round, so after you've played out those 3 turns, you are going to have to either feed all of these settler cards that you have below, so you are going to have to spend food for that, or these roof cards, or a combination of both. So like I said, if I had 5 settlers here, if I had 2 of these roof cards, I would then only have to spend 3 food. So to put it simply, at the end of each round, for every settler card that you have, you're either having to spend a food, or you have to have the roof card to represent a roof over their head. So the next card here is a stone ball. So whenever you draft a stone ball, again, that would be placed underneath your board. And then for every stone ball that you have, including this one, you gain 1 of those skill knives. So this is a great way to gain those skill knives. So if I continue to collect these stone balls, I will gain more and more of those skill knives that then I can use to collect more and more of those resources. And then additionally, this will be worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. I didn't mention that, but the roof cards will be 2 victory points at the end of the game as well. But yes, the stone balls, great way to get more of those skill knives. And then the last card type that you can gain when drafting is the utensil card. So again, just like the other 2, this will gain you 2 victory points at the end of the game, but it will also get you a few different things. So first, you will immediately gain 1 hide from the main supply and then add that into your storage. And then this is going to actually add +1 to every cook action that you do. So when you go to this cook tile here, you will get 1 to 4 kind of cook actions, but this one will actually gain you 1 more, so you can go 1 to 5. And then also, this actually allows you to gain 1 less mitten at the end of each round. So based off of where your slider is, that is going to actually tell you how many mitten you have to add into your storage at the end of each round. But with this card, so if you have 1 of these, or more of them, you could have more of these and gain less and less mitten. So for example, with my slider here, at the end of each round, I would be gaining 3 mitten, but with one of these cards, I would be gaining 2. So that is everything for the various cards. Like I said, there are 4 different types of cards. There are the settlers, the roofs, the stone balls, as well as the utensils. They're going to be shuffled up, and each round you're going to be drafting one of those. And then you're going to, after you've drafted one of those and done whatever action it needs to be done, you will then have your workers to place, which, like I've already said, on the first round you're only going to have 1. And let's go over all of the different tiles and what they would do when you placed a worker on them. So the first tile that we have here is the furnished tile. So this is going to be how you're going to move up the furnished track, which, like I mentioned, wherever your furnished marker is on your furnished track at the end of the game is going to dictate how many victory points each of your settlers is going to be, and then also how many victory points you're going to get for each set of 4 different types of settlers. So if I was able to move my furnished track up, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, each of the settlers that I had here at the end of the game would be 2 victory points each, and then also each set of 4 would also be 2 victory points each. If I was able to get it all the way to the end, each settler would be 2 victory points each, and then each set of 4 of them would be 6 victory points. So whenever I place my worker on to this furnished tile, I would then be able to either pay 2 wool or 1 hide a certain amount of times based on where I am on the track. So if I wanted to move up 1 space, or the first space on the track, I would have to spend that once. So either 2 wool or 1 hide. For the next space, I would have to pay that twice. So I would have to pay 2 wool and then 2 wool again, or I could pay 2 wool, 1 hide, or I could pay 2 hide. Then it would be 2, 2, and then the last 2 spaces I would have to spend 3 times. Next up is the cook tile. So if I placed a worker here, I would be able to cook the different resources that I had in my storage. So all of the different things here that you can cook are shells, wheat, fish, rabbits, sheep, deer, as well as cows, and each of those are going to take a certain amount of cook actions, and they are going to get you a specific amount of resources back. So with the cook tile, you can do 1 to 4 cook actions. So for example, the cow here takes 4 cook actions, so I would only be able to do the cow. The deer and the sheep take 3 cook actions, so I could do a deer, and then I could maybe do a shell, because the shell and the wheat are 1 cook action, and then the fish and the rabbit are 2 cook actions. So if I wanted to use all 4 cook actions, I could do 1 rabbit and 1 fish, so on and so forth. And then additionally, like I mentioned, if you did have any utensil cards, those would allow you to then have more and more of those cook actions. And then based off of whatever you cook, you will then gain food and hide and bones, respectively. Also, if you did do the sheep, you would also gain wool from that, but there's a little legend at the bottom for whatever you cook and what you get in return. Next up is the craft action. So this is where upgrading these tiles come into play. So each of these tiles can actually be upgraded, and placing your worker onto the craft tile allows you to upgrade them. So with the first side here, you guys will see that each of these tiles are going to have 2 resources in a little beige banner. And if you come to this craft action, you will then be able to spend those resources in order to upgrade a tile. So for example, if I wanted to upgrade my cook action here, I could spend 1 brick, 1 seaweed. I would flip that over. It would then be worth 2 victory points at the end of the game. But now my cook action, instead of doing 1 to 4 actions, will be 1 to 6 actions. So each of these tiles, like I said, will have a different kind of upgrade, and they all require 2 resources of a type. It will have it on the tile that you need to spend in order to upgrade them. Next tile is the clean tile. So like I said, with the mitten, it is really important to both get rid of the mitten that you have in your storage, and then also move your slider back so that you avoid gaining more mitten and also avoid negative victory points at the end of the game. So if you come to this clean action here, there are 2 different things that you can do. So the first option would be to spend 2 different resources of the 4 that are displayed on the clean tile. So I could spend a hide and a wheat. And that could either get rid of 1 mitten from my storage area, or it would allow me to slide my slider over to the left once. And then additionally, you do gain another roof card, which I will say these roof cards are a little bit different than the ones that you will draft here. The ones that you draft here are going to give you 2 victory points at the end of the game, whereas the ones you gain from the clean tile are only going to get you 1 victory point at the end of the game, but they still work in the same way as the other roof tiles, where they do allow you to put a roof over the head of one of your settlers at the end of a round. So you gain a roof card, but additionally you can do the same thing, but instead of spending 2 different resources, you can spend 3 different resources, and that then allows you to either get rid of 3 mitten, or move your slider bar back 3 spaces, or do a mixture of those 2 actions. So I could get rid of 2 mitten and slide my slider once. I could slide my slider twice and then get rid of 1 mitten, whatever combination you want. And then also you do gain one of those roof cards again as well. And then next up we have the trade action tile. So if I placed a worker there, I would then be able to work with the trade track here. So this is the trade track. And basically what you're going to be doing is you are going to be doing exactly that. You are going to be trading in resources. And each spot on this track is going to have a times with a number. So it's ×2, ×3, ×4, ×4, ×5, ×5, ×6. Oopsie. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to be trading in that many of the same resource in order to go up on that track. So if I wanted to move up on the track the first time, I would have to trade in 2 of the same resources in order to move up. And then after I did that, I would have the option of spending a skill knife in order to gain the reward below that spot. So each spot is going to have a different thing, but for the first spot here, if I was able to trade in 2 of the same resource, I would then be able to spend a skill knife in order to gain a cow. Then the next spot would be a deer, then a sheep, then a rabbit, then a fish, so on and so forth. And the further that you do get up on the trade track, the more of a single resource you do have to trade in, but also at the same time, the more and more victory points you're going to get at the end of the game. So if you are able to get all the way to the end of the trade track, so you can trade in 6 of a single type of resource, you would actually gain 20 victory points at the end of the game. All right, and then we also have, I've already kind of went over these ones, but the 4 at the bottom here are going to be the gather actions. So these are going to be triggered whenever you place a settler below them, but also you can use these as worker placement spots as well if you need to gain a certain type of resource. So if you go to the water gather action here, you can either gain a shell or a seaweed. For the green gather action here, you can either gain a stone or a wool. The brown gather action allows you to gain a wood, and then the yellow gather action is going to allow you to gain a wheat. So those can be used for that as well. And then I will add, when you do upgrade them, they do add a permanent one of those environment icons to that gather action. So when you do add more settlers to that gather tile or below that gather tile, it will have an additional environment icon there that you will then gain more resources for. So those are the 4 gather down there. And then we also have this last one in the bottom right hand corner, which is going to be different for every single player, which I'm not going to go into all of them, but the specific one that I have here is Explore. So these are this is one of various unique abilities that you can gain. But this here is, I would have to spend 2 of either food or bone. I could spend a mixture of those 2, so I could spend a food and a bone, 2 food or 2 bone. And this would then allow me to draw 2 cards off of the village deck here, and then I could keep 1. If it was a settler card, I would then have to place it below that coordinating gather action. I wouldn't gain any of the harvest actions there, but it would add, again, an environment icon for the next time that I added a settler there. It would also, if it was one of the 3 other cards, I would just add it there, and that would then get me something if possible. But if I did upgrade this one, this would then, if it is a settler card, I would be able to do the bottom harvest action. So that's only if it's upgraded. But yes, that's a great way to kind of get more cards. So that is the unique action of Explore, but there are some various other ones. I'll kind of just read you guys the titles of them, but there is Muster, Spin Wool, Recruit, Build, Hunt Boar, Tend Land, and Innovate. So those are the various unique actions that you can gain. or you will get at the beginning of the game. And I do believe that that is everything for the various actions. So like I said, this is going to be played over 4 rounds, and at the end of a round, so once you've played through 3 turns, you'll have to do a few things. So one thing is, I've already mentioned, you will have to either food or have a roof over each of your settlers' heads, so you will have to pay food or have the cards. But if you don't have the roof cards or the food to pay, you will have to get rid of those settlers. And sometimes that might be something that you decide to do. You might actually decide not to spend any of your food and actually just get rid of those settler cards. You can kind of build up an engine with those settler cards, but at the same time, you might want to give them up eventually in order to save that food for other things. And then also you will have to gain mitten for wherever your slider is. So like I said, if my slider was all the way up here, I would have to gain 3 mitten for that. And again, if I didn't have enough room for that mitten, I would then have to push up my slider again, and I would have to figure out a way and use that clean tile action in order to get rid of that mitten, as well as move my slider back over to the left. But yes, I believe that is everything for the end of the round. Once all 4 rounds have been played through, you'll move into endgame scoring, which endgame scoring consists of a bunch of different things, but it's going to be for all of the cards that you have at the bottom, for all of your upgraded tiles, as well as where you are on the furnished track, and then you're going to score based off of that for your settlers, and then you will also score for where you are with your trade track as well. Additionally, you will gain some victory points if you have any food or these skill knives left in your storage, and then you will gain -1 victory point for every mitten that you have left in your storage area, as well as wherever your slider is, you are going to get negative victory points for that as well. So if you are unable to get your slider back down and it is possibly all the way over to the right, you would gain -6 victory points for that. So it is very important to get your slider down by the end of the game and also get rid of a lot of that mitten so you can avoid those negative victory points. And then once all of that final scoring has been done, whatever player has the most victory points at the end of the game is the winner of Skara Brae. All right, friends, so that is going to be everything for this preview of Skara Brae. Hopefully you guys got a good overview of how the game plays so you can better see if it's something that you would enjoy. Definitely go and check out the campaign if you guys are interested. I will have it linked down below. Huge thank you again to Garful Games for sponsoring today's video. I appreciate it so much. If you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. That is everything. I love you guys so much. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.